Welcome to the first Sunday of Advent. The reading for this first Sunday in the lectionary, year B, is the Gospel of Mark, which I'm going to talk about, chapter 13, also known as the Little Apocalypse. And also this poem, without reference, is woven through it, so I'm going to read it now. It's The Good Kind of Waiting by Toko Pa Turner. It goes like this. There's a good kind of waiting, which trusts the agents of fermentation. There's a waiting which knows that in pulling away, one can more wholly return. There is the waiting which prepares oneself, which anoints and adorns and makes oneself plump with readiness for love's return. There is a good kind of waiting, which doesn't put oneself on hold, but rather adds layers to the grandness of one's being worthy. This sweet waiting for one's fruits to ripen doesn't stumble over itself to be the first to give, but waits for the giving to issue at its own graceful pace. So you'll hear those verses woven through this. And you may have asked yourself, why is Mark so much better than the other Gospels? And even though I would echo that sentiment, it's not polite nor good parenting to have such an obvious favorite. But I am thrilled that in my last year of regular preaching from a pulpit that's not my own, coincides with the lectionary's year of Mark, featuring the Gospel of Mark all year. Yahoo! Especially after Matthew. Mark is the coolest gospel because Mark is a dramatist. We could even say Mark is a drama queen. He knows how to tell a story without awkwardly repeating himself 100 times like John and Matthew do. Mark's stories are short, and they're pithy, and they leave a lot to our own imagination, which is good. He is present tense, now. And immediately, he so often says. And immediately Jesus did this, and immediately they went there. So most of the time, the stories or the sayings or the parables just flow. Mark is metaphorical. He has all kinds of dramatic devices like the messianic secret, which is in his stories that the people who are supposed to know Jesus the best don't really know who or what he is, but the demons do, and so do the oppressors, and so do the sick and the lame and the pus encrusted, who are themselves spiritually suspect in this time and place in the gospel. And Mark weaves an apocalyptic theme that we hear today that's not really about the end of the world, the way that unthoughtful Christians have taken it literally. And actually, no biblical apocalyptic text should be taken literally the way that unthoughtful Christians have taken it literally. Mark uses the apocalyptic imagery of the book of Daniel, and he weaves a radical political message to his contemporaries, which is what apocalyptic texts do more often than not. You could not say out loud in his day or directly that your oppressor and your oppressor's emperor are demonic, are satanic, and that the resistance needs to resist and even subvert the oppressor's social structure. But you could say and talk about a mythical Son of Man coming with angels and bringing reinforcements from all four directions, corners of the earth. So be ready, be watchful, be vigilant, because when you see these things, we will be at the very gates of Rome or Jerusalem. He doesn't say which. What does all of that mean? Except that the rebellion is coming within the lifetime of the reader. So be ready. It isn't about waiting for the end of the world, but about Jesus confronting the principalities and the powers, often depicted in Mark as satanic or demonic, and even legions of demons, just to make it really clear who he's talking about. So Mark is full of mythological imagery and imagination that he sees to talk about, that he uses rather to talk about the resistance to the principalities and the power. And he does it in dramatic and entertaining ways. Oh, and one more reason to love the Gospel of Mark is that it's the shortest gospel. And that's got to count for something, right? But now we shift. There's a good kind of waiting, which trusts the agents of fermentation, that we have to wait for it to happen. There's a waiting which knows that in pulling away, one can more fully return. That the best, most healthy and resonant love is when we are differentiated and living within our own boundaries, yet still visiting one another across our true differences. There's the waiting which prepares oneself, which anoints and adorns and makes oneself plump with readiness for love's return. That kind of waiting in which we learn to love ourselves as we love our neighbors and all those others that we truly love. There's the good kind of waiting, which doesn't put oneself on hold, but rather adds layers of grandness of one's being worthy. The kind of waiting that isn't time out while we get better or more perfect or hope to be prettier or stronger or smarter, or for some of us younger. There's this sweet waiting for one's fruit to ripen. And it's because we know deep down in our bones and in the pure crystal of our hearts that we are ripening. We are ripening, and that in spite of every bruise on our skin, we are an awesome fruit of succulent juiciness and most sacred, rare person. Each one of us. In short, Advent is not some season of arduous waiting in which we are frustrated within a detainment not of our own making. We're not taxiing while others are taking off and landing, or restrained while others jump ahead in line. Advent is not that kind of waiting, not any kind of sacrifice or punishment or slow motion delay. It's the good kind of waiting, ripening until just the right moment. And one more thing. I'm not supposed to say this, but real Advent has nothing to do with Christmas, if you ask me. The season of Advent appears on our calendar now, those 4 Sundays before Christmas, but it could be any time, at any point of the year. It could be any time, at any point of our lives. It could be any time, at any point from our birth to our death. While we wait for ourselves to ripen, or for love to ripen, or for hope to ripen, or for opportunity to ripen, or for change to ripen, or for expectations to ripen, while we wait, we hold ourselves open to receive a word with our name on it. To hold ourselves open while we receive a word with our name on it. It might not be a word with letters or delivered by a voice. It could be a note or a song or a whisper, a cry or a coo, an idea or an aha, even a vision of beauty or a touch by someone or something unseen. In our ripening, when we are waiting and holding ourselves open, there will eventually come something with our name on it. And somehow we will know that it's meant for us. You've had that happen. I know you have. When you were ripening and holding yourself open without trying to force a conclusion or a particular outcome, you received a word or an affirmation or a confirmation or an insight or something that you knew almost immediately was what you had been waiting for. That's Advent. The process of holding oneself open while we are waiting. And then, when it comes, whatever and whenever it is, that's Christmas. We're not talking December. It can happen in August, for crying out loud. What we do in church, our tradition, our rituals, that's just acting out what we know happens in real life, whenever it happens. Whether incarnation or resurrection or an epiphany, these things are real and they happen, when the time and we are ripe. So let's not get caught up in liturgies and rituals and holidays and traditions that we neglect the kind of waiting in which we hold ourselves open and ripen. And you know how to do that as well as I do. It's not rocket science. There's no big spiritual secret here. There are all kinds of ways to hold ourselves open as we ripen in order to hear and to see and to apprehend the word with our name on it. Practicing quiet is one. Practicing listening is another. Practicing observing is one. Practicing focus is another. Practicing breath work is one. Practicing reflection and contemplation is another. Some people do these things while stationary, others while they're running or riding or swimming. Mary Oliver used to stash pencils in trees in the woods around her house so she could write down something whenever it jumped out at her as she walked in the woods. There's not one way, and not even one way for one person. For all of us to practice multiple ways of holding ourselves open is the secret that is no secret. When we have ripened, in whatever season we are in, we will hear that word with our name on it. Well, that's all I got. Welcome to Advent, and peace be with you.